Well, good evening from here in London. I'm Brian Burridge and I'm the Chief Executive of the Royal Aeronautical Society. And you're all very welcome to this Sopwith Memorial Lecture. Today's webinar is being recorded. There'll be a presentation and then questions and answers. So if you have any questions, please log them on to the question tote on your control panel. And you're all in listen-only mode. But if you do need to communicate with the support team, then do that in the same way on the question function, please, if you need help. The current situation, given the era in which Tommy Sopwith lived, is somewhat relevant to the way in which we could compare the impact of COVID-19 with that of Spanish flu, which swept through the globe in the immediate post-World War I years. Local Kingston newspapers of the day bear testament to its impact near the Sopwith factory. And there are indeed some other interesting parallels. After the war, the aircraft market slumped. Until September 1920, the Sopwith company built only 15 aircraft, while trying to maintain the employment of their workforce by diversifying into motorcar bodies, into motorcycles, and even into aluminium saucepans. Then in 1920, the Treasury launched a huge claim against the Sopwith company for excess war profits. The company went into receivership and was wound up within weeks, but did meet all the liabilities to their creditors. And 2 months later, Sopwith launched the H.D. Hawker Engineering Company Limited with himself as chairman, Fred Sigrist as chief engineer, and Harry Hawker as designer and test pilot. And the company very soon recruited Sidney Cam to work as a designer under Fred. Cam went on to design 52 aircraft types, many of which became famous marques, and they sold almost 30,000 aircraft. And the interesting thing about Fred Sigrist was that he was only recruited by Sopwith in 1910 as a chauffeur, a mechanic, and a general dog's body, but rapidly became an outstanding factory manager. So we can recognize three familiar points. First, aerospace is a long-term game. Secondly, great things can come out of adversity. And thirdly, it's the sheer doggedness of the human spirit that makes it all possible. So it's a great privilege to introduce tonight's speaker who sees such things on a daily basis. Dirk Hope, Chief Executive Officer of Airbus Defence and Space for 4 years now. Previously, he's with Siemens, and he's got vast experience over more than 25 years in advanced manufacturing, high-tech and digital industries in automotive, rail and aerospace, and right across the globe too, starting with Renault in Paris, then across Europe, Argentina, and even Africa and China. So the title of tonight's lecture is European Defence and Security in a Post-Brexit and Post-COVID-19 World. We live in turbulent times, and Europe is faced with massive challenges in adjusting to the post-COVID world. Huge amounts of government investment will have to be applied to the recovery. Permanent changes also will have to occur in the EU's security and defence policy. And overlaying this is this new sense of competition, of international competition, particularly between the US and China. Competition over trade, competition over geopolitical power, and even competition over capital. So how will Europe adjust to this in the space and defence sectors? Dirk, over to you.
So thank you. I would like to start with a video and then take over Dirk. hello from my side, and being honored that you take the time after a long business day to join our lecture. After the video, which gave you a short introduction of our portfolio, I can always say that I'm very proud to work for that company when I see our people and products and systems. But currently, what we see is from time to time, most nations are facing huge challenges, be it through warfare, revolution, natural disasters, or financial or economic crisis. But it's very rare to occur two crises at the same time. And it's even rarer to see that most of humanity is facing the same challenges at the same time. So this is what we're currently experiencing. We see that the way we live our lives and the way we do our business is changing rapidly and tremendously, and we probably can expect that we will never go back to the way we lived and worked before until let's say a few months ago. This brings me also to the subject of today, European defense and security in a post-Brexit and a post-COVID-19 world. So I think more than ever, moving hopefully through the peak of the health crisis, we will face a big, huge economic crisis. So I think it's the right topic at the right time, and I'm looking forward also to your questions after the topics that I will present to you. So if you could please change the slide. Yeah, many of you will know, and Sir Brian already mentioned, that this lecture was established in 1990 to honor Sir Thomas Sopwith, a fellow of the Society. And in his 101-year life, he wrote aviation history. And a contemporary of the Wright brothers, he went on to become a highly successful aircraft manufacturer on his own right. His Camel and Pup revolutionized aerial combat in World War I. His Hurricane and Lancaster were among the most successful designs of World War II, and the Harrier jump jet emerged from an industrial empire that employed up to 127,000 people, so almost the size of Airbus today. But Thomas Sopwith was more than a remarkable aviation pioneer and industrialist. He was a sportsman in the old tradition and one of the world-leading 12-meter class yachtsmen, very nearly winning the America's Cup in 1934. Quite a guy and a pioneer who can rightly be classed among the most influential non-political figures of this century. He would certainly add a word or two to add to this evening's lecture, the aim of which is to highlight some of the areas that we in the industry, working with our partners in the European government, need to prioritize as we deal with the consequences of the current environment and we look to support a European recovery. So I would like to touch three parts during my presentation. Firstly, I would like to look at the current operating environment, so the dual challenge of post-COVID-19 and post-Brexit. And secondly, I'll look at the European UK defense, space and security industries and reinforce why it is so important that we continue to invest into these industries. And thirdly, I'll offer some thoughts on why UK and Europe should continue to collaborate even post-Brexit and even should increase the collaboration. So I will start with the current operating environment, and if you could please change the slide. So as you can see, these are unprecedented times. This is the biggest challenge we face since Airbus was created, its biggest challenge post Second World War, and we face new challenges that we didn't imagine a few months ago. So in a matter of weeks, we have gone back to ways of working that we have not had before, and now coming slightly out of the health crisis, we see that we have to prepare for a huge economic crisis and prepare how we can get our industries out of that crisis and hopefully to recover as fast as possible. But as you can see in these two statistics, IMF is estimating a collapse of the global economy by 3% in 2020, and the European Union may do even worse. And this is also from many discussions that I have currently, we cannot expect that Europe will do better than probably what is displayed here. On the OECD estimate you see on the right side is predicting a double-digit fall in GDP in 2020 for France, Spain, Italy, and the UK, and over 6% in Germany. So we see every statistic that you currently see right now is showing that there will be huge impact to our economy, and after the health crisis, we definitely are facing one of the biggest economic crises ever. If you could change the slide, please. But what the crisis has also shown us is that our aerospace, defense and space industries are of strategic importance and systemically important, enabling the flow of goods as well as the rescue, supply and relief missions, contributing to the readiness of our armed forces to deploy essential for critical infrastructure, internet connection, digitalization, navigation and air observation, as well as for crisis prevention. And we have seen many of our products during this time supporting our society in coping with the health crisis, and I'll come back to that later. Our efforts to keep going through the crisis have been enabled by digitalization, and I'm sure you all had the same experience going back to home office or to shifts working where you couldn't work as before. And many companies were able to deal with that in a very short time, adapting to working from home with new tools like Skype, Zoom, WebEx, and many others. I think, at least from my side, I can say, for me, it is much more tiring to be 12, 14 hours a day in telephone conferences or video conferences than to travel and have direct communication with customers and colleagues. So it was difficult, very difficult to adapt, but I think so far in the different nations that we're dealing with, we were able, at least from our company side, to deal with that pretty good, coping with the new challenges and preparing in order to, on one hand side, protect our employees, but on the other hand side also to keep business going. So we see that digitalization played a major role in that period, and we see, of course, that this is relevant for home office, it's for virtual healthcare, it is even for things like on-demand streaming, and all these technologies are supported by space assets. So we see that defense and space is very relevant for our society, especially in crisis times. The service we get from space have enabled us to keep a minimum of everyday life up and running, and we see that the need for connectivity is bigger than ever. So space has allowed us in the companies to keep operations running far away from headquarters and factories, enabling communication and connectivity and collaboration. So the efforts of our European governments, our home nations, to tackle the crisis and limit and mitigate the economic consequences have been enormous. So I can only thank all the governments that have supported us in the recent months to find fast solutions. And I can say that we received tremendous support by our home nations to accelerate projects, working on improvement of payment terms, looking at short-term solutions to bridge the time, and then prepare also for a crisis recovery coming out of the health crisis. So here we really have, especially to put a high attention to our supply chain, because we should not forget that in our supply chain we have a lot of very highly sophisticated smaller companies that are now at the edge, despite all the efforts in the different governments and support regimes. We still see that it's not yet secured, and we have to do additional efforts to make sure that our supply industries to remain stable, also coming out of the health crisis. So this is definitely one of our key attention points, and we will also continue to work with the governments in order to support our whole supply chain. If you could please change the slide. So what happens very often, and we looked at the history after other crisis. And what we very often see as a reaction to bigger crises, we see that a lot of governments turn to save on defense budgets. And this is something that, of course, is very critical in these times, and I will come back to that topic. So we strongly believe, I strongly believe, that more than ever, we have to secure the defense and space and security budgets in order to cope with the challenges that we're currently facing. And this is ongoing. I think we see that a lot of efforts are taken by the nations, but also at the European Union. So currently we have an ongoing discussion on the European Union budget for the multi-annual financial framework from 2021 to 2027. And here we see, of course, that there is a strong effort also to protect the activities for defense and space and for aerospace. What we can also see is the COVID-19 crisis will make, unfortunately, our world not a safer place. And so we can expect that, especially in these times, we can expect it will be more critical to secure connectivity and to secure also the defense and security budgets in order to be prepared also for additional crises that could occur based on the health and then on the economic crisis. So we believe that any kind of cutting of these budgets that have slightly recovered in the recent years, and where there is still a strong push towards a stronger increase before the COVID-19, we hope that everyone understands that the COVID-19 is not the time where these new growth efforts should be jeopardized and changed. So we see that, especially on the military side, through the cuts after other crises, for example, after the economic crisis in 2008, we suffer in many of our home nations on the base foundation of the military equipment, and we also see that the savings have led to less innovation coming from military, as we have experienced in the 80s or 90s. So where the military part played a vital role also for innovation towards society. So we believe that especially strong programs can accelerate the recovery phase, and we also believe that through defense projects acceleration, also the civil aerospace can be supported, as most of the supply chain companies are dual use, and they supply products and systems not only into civil but also into the military part of the companies. So we strongly believe by supporting defense projects, we also can stabilize the whole aerospace industry as a whole. And here, just to name a few now, we believe that supporting projects like Euromail or Future Combat Air System or the equivalent of Tempest, these are strong foundations for a European approach towards European defense procurement and European defense strategy. I will come back to the topic of Future Combat Air System and Tempest later, as this plays a vital role, in my opinion, for the future collaboration between UK and the European Union. In this context, it's also important to understand that because very often big companies like Airbus are seen as being very dominant, but we should not forget that whatever project we start, 60–65% of the supply of the product system are coming from small and medium-sized companies delivering into our projects. So whenever big projects are accelerated, it will help the whole supply chain for the military and also for the civil aerospace. We need to ensure also that we support these companies, because we have highly qualified employees in these industries, and the ecosystem of aerospace is one of the leading innovators and driving innovation in all our nations. So we believe strongly that we need to support the industry also on the way forward coming out of the health crisis. We see that there's a strong push. We see that projects like, for example, on the German side, we see a strong support to accelerate the project of the electronic radar for the Eurofighter. We see the first project called Rodriga, where there will be, hopefully still this year, 38 new Aerofighters or Eurofighters. And we see, of course, the efforts to support Euromail and future combat air systems. So we see a lot of efforts in order to support the industry in these difficult times. But it is in order to keep these skills, and we have to avoid, like in the past, that there is, based on budget cuts, a loss of highly skilled people in our industries. Because this has to be clear, whatever we lose in such a period, it takes decades to rebuild it afterwards, and normally with that, future products and systems will be ordered from third countries, not coming from Europe anymore. So we see that there are now a lot of support programs launched in the European nations. For example, there's a huge commitment from the German government, about $1 billion on R&D, accessible on a yearly basis, and we see also a further 7 billion commitment for the national hydrogen strategy, supporting the use of green hydrogen in aircraft and the concept of hybrid electric flight. In order to decarbonize our industry, this is an important step and support that we receive here. But we also see that there was an announcement made, and from the discussion that I have, I can see this is a serious push from the German government and especially from the German MOD to support security defense projects in order to accelerate them, to start them still in 2020 and 21. And we welcome, of course, also the strong plan announced last week by the French government to provide 15 billion for its aerospace and defense industries to safeguard jobs and decarbonize air transport. Again, this includes an acceleration of planned military and civil security procurement deals of over 800 million euros. So the research and technology components of these plans will serve as a strong and much needed accelerator in the transition towards the decarbonization of our sectors. And Airbus will definitely continue to lead in this important mission and play a vital role in the decarbonization of the sector. If you could change the slide, please. As I mentioned before, we used our assets during the last 3 months, and our customers, of course, used their products and systems in order to support the society, supporting with a lot of different activities in the fight against COVID-19. So what we did is, first of all, we tried everything to protect our employees. And secondly, we tried to keep our operations up and running to secure also the jobs of our employees for the way forward. We did very good on the defense and space side, getting a lot of support of our home nation to keep operations up and running, even despite the lockdown. And we were very privileged to get a lot of support to get this done. And we have to be very grateful for all the support during this time. But we also used our assets to build an air bridge between China and Europe, for example, to transport vital health equipment, including protective masks, ventilators, and thermometers for use by the health service across Europe and the US. So this was a tremendous effort of all our colleagues who were very proud to support our nations with the supply of critical equipment during these times. If you could change the slide, please. And looking at the UK, I'm very proud of our teams in the UK that really did a lot of efforts to support society wherever possible. So looking at what we did, we were at the heart of the Ventilator Challenge Consortium, which has successfully brought together significant UK industrial technology engineering businesses from across the aerospace, automotive, and medical sectors. And it's with some pride that my Airbus colleagues, working in partnership with my former colleagues from Siemens, transformed the Advanced Manufacturing Research Centre in North Wales into a ventilator production facility in a matter of days. So this was really impressive to see. And by the end of June, Airbus and Siemens, working also with Ford, McLaren, STI, and Penland, and many other companies, will have produced well in excess of 10,000 medical ventilators for the national health system. So the ventilator challenge shows what is possible if we collaborate in industry and government, come together with a common objective and a spirit of collaboration. So this is something I'll come back also later again. So elsewhere, in response to the COVID-19 crisis, we transported and donated over 1.5 million protective masks to the national health systems in England and Wales. We produced tens of thousands of face visors in our factory in Portsmouth. In Oxford, Airbus helicopter have been working around the clock to maintain and keep flying UK's emergency services helicopters for the police and air ambulance fleets. So we have been working in partnership with the MOD to ensure also that the Skynet program would continue to deliver vital military satellite communication and support of military operations across the world without any disruption. So we work closely with the Royal Air Force to maintain the A400M Atlas aircraft and maximize availability for critical tasks as a national standby capability. The Atlas has been used frequently on short notice tasking, including to fly critical ill patients from the Shetland or Orkney Islands off the coast of Scotland, where there were serious outbreaks of COVID-19 and limited health facilities, to intensive care units in Aberdeen and Glasgow. So supporting with the A400M aircraft was, for me, it was a very special sign after all the bad press that we had in the past, to see this fantastic aircraft supporting in all health missions across Europe. We doubled the Wi-Fi X-band bandwidth available for use on Royal Navy ships free of charge, enabling ships companies to stay in touch via video with their families and loved ones. And we made our Earth observation capability available to the Joint Security Resilience Center to allow monitoring of people movement, as well as car and marine traffic during the lockdown, in order to, of course, provide essential information for the Recover and Resilience Center. When you think that we've been replicating these activities all across Europe, not only in England, I think you can agree that we recognize our responsibilities and that all our employees are very proud whenever they have the opportunity to give back to society and to support in difficult times. If you could change the slide, please. Coming to Brexit, it is, of course, a very difficult topic for a European company like Airbus, where we of course face additional challenges in the future. So Brexit is driving a lot of change, and it opens a lot of questions how in the future the collaboration between UK and the European Union will work. And of course this is especially related to the rotation of goods, the mobility of skilled people, and of course, as we having optimized our supply chain over decades, we see that products moving forward and backwards from UK towards to Europe are vital for our competitiveness in the civil and military sector. So for us, the question on what Brexit will look like is more important than ever, and this is of course under higher pressure even now under the COVID-19 impact and the economic crisis we face. So we are concerned about the current negotiation between the European Union and the UK, because we see that we have reached a stalemate, and that we remain concerned that we would get really to an end of this year without a deal. And this would create a lot of problems for our company and of course for the whole supply chain included, including topics like customs, tariffs, supply chain, and as I said before, the mobility of our people. So if negotiations could not be successfully concluded in due time, we will need to contingency measures adopted on both sides, similar to ones adopted early on to ensure temporary business continuity. But this is, of course, something that's suboptimal and will lead to additional suffering for the whole industry. So we still hope that agreements can be found, and especially on defense, space, and security, as we see the cooperation between UK and Europe as absolutely vital for the further development of UK and Europe. We see also, while the UK could indeed adjust to WTO terms, they would particularly damaging for several sectors of the British economy, including services, manufacturing, and agriculture. And according to the CBI, UK exports to the EU would face a trade-weighted average tariff of around 4.3% the day after a no-deal Brexit, and goods going from the EU into the UK would face tariffs of around 5.7%. So definitely damaging the competitiveness on both sides. For Airbus as a whole, it's important to keep a sufficient level playing field among our home countries, as this underpins the fluidity of products and services that flow within our group, as well as with our customers and suppliers. If you could change the slide, please. So in defense and space, noting the UK's contribution to wider European defense and security, Airbus calls to kick off quickly and include the negotiation of an ambitious and close dedicated partnership, because we need that in order to go forward, and definitely to also continue our business on a strong collaboration between UK and the European nation. And we definitely believe that this is also supported from the EU, that would welcome such a discussion. We also believe that British scientific research is intimately tied up with that of our European counterparts. So there's no way that we will not suffer if we cannot continue a smooth cooperation in the future. So, and we have seen already one casualty, and I know that that's a really big pain point in the discussion and also in the ongoing negotiation. And this has been Galileo, the satellite navigation system, where there has been a strong also financial support of UK into the program. And now, based on the non-clarified conditions of the Brexit, of course, there's a very emotional discussion on the way forward towards space collaboration. And this is something that needs to be addressed, that needs to be solved, because it remains the elephant in the room, and it's something that needs to be sorted out on the way forward. But I come back to that at a later stage. And looking at also defense, looking at the ability in Europe to support the NATO collaboration, we definitely have to recognize UK is one of the strong leaders in this collaboration. And this is of course playing a vital role also in the collaboration with the European membership countries in the future. So we hope that UK will remain as close as possible with the EU 27 in the future, and this of course post-Brexit and post-COVID-19, as we face difficulties that we have never faced before, and I think collaboration will be a very important point to get out of that crisis in a faster way than we would do this in a separate way. So to be clear, Airbus is fully committed to UK as one of our home nations, and this of course will reflect also in future investments, and of course also in our research and development, and of course in our workforce on the way forward. So this is the first part, the operating environment, and let me now go and switch to the second part, which is about the need for continued investment and not cutting the investment into defense and space and security. You could change the slide, please. Yeah, the European focus, facing now the same double whammy of Brexit and planning its long-term response to the pandemic, the European Union has reframed the multi-annual financial framework to be the backbone of the recovery plan. And this is the MFF focuses on critical sectors such as health and energy, but it also includes a budget for defense, security, and space. So very important also for the recovery phase for our industries. But right now we're still focusing on the COVID-19 crisis. We know that the economic crisis is accelerating, and that definitely in the second half of that year we will see a stronger impact, because at least in my environment I see many people that are still acting like the economic crisis can be smoothened or can be handled, and we all have to be clear. It will have severe impact on our society, on our industries, and the way we work and live together. So we believe that in these times we need to use our ability to invest into military capabilities, and as we saw how critical they are during this pandemic health crisis, we see that these assets have been developed over decades, and now they were able to support us in these difficult times. So to stop now innovation and investments into defense and security would definitely lead at a later stage again to bigger challenges and even more critical phases than if we would keep at least the status quo and as planned before, continue the growth into the investments of defense, space and security on the way forward, especially also not forgetting the R&D part. So we believe strongly that cutting budgets in defense and space would undermine our resilience for the next crisis. We believe that European defense and space industrial sectors are a core element of the new impetus to make European military capabilities fit for the purpose to protect Europeans. The pillar of European strategy of autonomy and its ability to act and create all the credible assets that we need in order to support our allies. We saw in 2008, during the economic recession and afterwards, the cuts on the military spending led to a significant fall in defense investments. With the projected drops in GDP in 2020, which could be even 2 or 3 times worse than what we experienced after 2008, there's a high risk that countries and governments could be tempted to do these easy cuts, not seeing the later impact that we would face maybe only years or decades afterwards. Cutting budgets for defense and space research risk imperiling the initiation of major defense programs at a time when Europe is trying to develop next generation fighter aircraft, main battle tanks, frigates, and other capabilities such as unmanned systems, as I said before, including FCAS and Tempest, which are crucial for Europe's military and technology edge. While duplication and fragmentation is something that we definitely have to avoid in Europe, and we have to manage better than in the past, as we see having different kinds of fighter aircraft has been a big challenge in Europe. And so we need to definitely have a stronger focus on European defense procurement and European defense strategy in order to avoid fragmentation and get to better balance of scale, and to underline the importance of sovereignty for Europe as part of the stronger contribution to the collaboration in NATO and to support our allies also on the way forward. And I know that there is, of course, a strong pressure coming from the US towards other nations in Europe that are not fulfilling yet the commitment of 2% spending of the GDP. And here's something that we need to keep in focus also for the way forward. So we definitely believe that specific support with defense and space and security is needed to mitigate the economic impact of COVID-19 and preserve the long-term future of Europe's industrial capability. We cannot repeat the mistakes of the past, because we will lose skills not only for a few months or years, we will lose them for decades, and it will be very expensive to rebuild them afterwards. So we see good examples, and I think there are a lot of, let's say, efforts in Europe to work closer together with the European Defence Fund, the Permanent Structures Corporation, PESCO, and many other initiatives in order to strengthen the collaboration across Europe. But we also see that even now already we see discussions starting, what should be the budget behind these activities. And we see that the EDF was even before COVID-19 already challenged. And now, of course, we see even bigger challenges. So we need to ensure that there is no security vacuum in Europe after the UK's withdrawal, and that bilateral cooperation between UK and EU member states in the field of defence and security will not be jeopardized. So with that, it is for us absolutely vital to focus on a closer collaboration between nations, between the EU member states and UK on all different levels, but also between the industrial player in UK and in Europe. We change the slide, please. Looking a bit more closer to UK. In the UK, having already expanded the regular strategic defence and security review to examine foreign policy, defence, security, international development priorities and objectives, given the additional pressure from Brexit, there's no surprise that it has been renamed to Integrated Review 2021 and was also now postponed. But it has to be clear, when it resumes more than ever, it's likely to have a sharp focus on value for money. And this is likely to challenge the whole industry as such, in order to do more with less, in order to be more efficient, provide more value for money for our customers. And the Royal Air Force will challenge us tremendously on the way forward under these lines. And it's only a matter of time when we see the same challenges coming from our other home nations and other customers around the world, because in these times, resources are scarce, and we need to do all efforts to work more agile and more efficient in the future. And this, of course, under all the aspects that we see, that we need to look at increased sovereign national approach in many countries, but we need to look into collaboration in order to overcome a fragmentation in Europe. So we also are very encouraged by the UK that there is a clear doctrine on the way forward to continue to work under open global procurement terms. This is, I think, is a very important sign in order to keep collaboration up and running. So with that, we expect, of course, to be challenged. We look at how we can contribute, and we look a bit at the A400M Atlas. In the recent months, we have seen when it's critical, we can increase availability tremendously through close collaboration between our customers and ourselves, and suddenly we are able to deliver a reliable and highly available fleet in order to support the critical missions. So this is more important than ever, and we will continue to drive from our side everything possible to drive savings and drive efficiency to support our customers. So we look, of course, at stronger commitments on the way forward, also towards the collaboration, looking at the Royal Air Force cost and efficiency targets, but delivering also a true system house concept for Bryce Norton, for example. So here we will foster the collaboration, the partnership with the Royal Air Force, and supporting with local engineering capabilities and enable autonomous decision making in the UK for local adaptations. So we will definitely strengthen our footprint in the UK and have closer collaboration with our customers on the way forward. So also, of course, keep a close eye on technology and innovation, drive important topics like digitalization and autonomy. So we definitely need to look at new concepts of working. One of the things that we do is what we call digital design, manufacturing and services, DDMS, where we will operate with a digital backbone in order to work with digital twins to reduce the development times and reduce the cost for simulation and testing in order to have a faster time to market for product and systems for our customers. So, but this is of course something that will also change the environment. We will see that we as big companies will be more challenged by SMEs. But of course, this is something also what we appreciate and what we look forward to, because we definitely need to be more agile in the future. But we will also see there will be a stronger shift from hardware focused to software focused activities, and we will definitely be challenged by newcomers in the industry using that advantage on the IT side that they have in many areas in order to challenge the status quo and the existing big players. So one thing to mention is last week we announced the Open Innovation Space Initiative. So with our consortium partners, KBR, Leidos, Northrop Grumman, and Kinetic, with whom we are collaborating on delivering future space solutions for the UK, including the Skynet service delivery web, we are looking to increase SMEs' involvement in future SATCOM services and space activities, creating high-value jobs and growth across the UK. So very important for the footprint in UK on the way forward. In space, we actually see budgets being less impacted by Brexit and COVID, at least in the UK so far. We see that the UK government has made clear that the ambition for space and the new national space strategy remain intact. And also the newly created National Space Innovation Program will go a long way to stimulate innovation post-COVID-19 and allowing also space R&D to continue to develop in UK as a strong anchor point for future growth in the UK. So our teams in the UK are world leaders in satellite payload design and manufacturing. So this is like the electronic brain of our spacecraft. And we will look to leverage this commitment to design the next generation of payloads that will retain UK's leadership position in the global telecommunication market. We strongly believe in our innovation that we can create with our very strong teams in UK. So MOD also has highlighted space as one of the 5 domains of war, and the government is committing to stand up its first space force. So it's definitely an exciting time for our industry to support the government on this path. So we stay definitely ready to stand. We are standing by, ready to help the MOD activities and the ambitions defined recently. So we have been successfully operating Skynet over 15 years, the UK's military satellite communication service. This service has delivered exemplary performance to deployed personnel across the world, and also created a strong export business for the UK in exceed of £1 billion, is supplying services to 14 NATO allies. So very strongly based on UK-based technology and strongly based also on our support on the way forward. So, but as I said, Galileo has been a pain point in the discussion, and we were, of course, also very sad to see that we were not able to find a solution between the European Union and UK to define already now a way of collaboration and using the investments done so far in a collaborative spirit on the way forward. So this is something that still needs to be sorted, and I hope that we find better solutions than we have so far. So also we see that this of course triggers a strong activity on the UK government to start planning for a 5 billion UK global navigation systems alternative, which is on one hand side, of course, very attractive for a company like ours, but again, it would weaken our collaboration and it would further fragmentate the industry in Europe and UK. So we see that there's still a long way to go, but we believe that these discussions need to take place, and we need to find compromises in both directions to build the foundation for a strong collaboration on defense and space and security on the way forward. We believe that each of the players, be it the European Union or be it UK, would lose if we would continue a path where we would go rather into separation than into collaboration. So with this, I would go into the final section about European cooperation. If you could change the slide, please. So as I said, Galileo shows that there's a stronger need for collaboration and to define the necessary compromises in order to allow a very strong collaboration on defense, security, and space. I think, and overall, everyone I talk to is confirming that this is needed and that this should be the way forward. But of course, the actions speak louder than words, so we need to also define the actions that are needed in order to get there. I think what we also have to be proud of in Europe is our diversity. I think it has been always a challenge dealing with the different mentalities, cultures, opinions, but it has always proven to be also a big driver for innovation and to do better with less. I think allowing our diversity, enabling us to build on that is one of the biggest innovation driver for the future, in my opinion. So something we should be proud of. And despite all the difficulties sometimes on the day-to-day working together, I definitely believe that we will create better solutions by accepting our diversity. So what is clear, also for UK, the collaboration with Europe is essential, and both sides have invested heavily in both directions in order to get to the status where we are today. And I think more than ever, it's important to build on that in the future. Taking the example of Future Combat Air System versus Tempest, I'm a strong advocate to say that we cannot afford two systems of that size being developed, being produced in competition in Europe and UK. The market is too small, and we need to ensure that we don't repeat the mistakes of the past by having Gripen, Rafale, and Eurofighter being developed in parallel. I think if we would here develop these systems in competition and would then strive for partners and customers in competition, the market is too small to play a leading role in the future. So this would be really a bad solution for the European Union and for UK on the way forward. I strongly believe that we have complementary skills and capabilities, and it would be definitely of great benefit for all involved partners if we could, at a later post-Brexit stage, once we found the collaboration rules for defense, security, and space, to merge these programs is, in my opinion, one of the vital foundation for long-term fruitful collaboration on defense, security, and space. So I hope strongly that we all together can support this this effort to strive for such a merge at a later stage, knowing that the resources are scarce and such a program is a huge effort, and it needs definitely the European 27 plus UK in order to realize that in competition with what's going on in the world. So I really hope forward that we can align on that we can support it, and that we can find a way forward on that. So looking at the challenges, we face so many challenges at the same time: health crisis, now the economic crisis, but of course we cannot forget in these times the challenge that we face regarding climate change. And this is also something where we definitely need to collaborate, and it needs a strong collaboration between UK and the European Union. I think we have highly sophisticated industrial leaders in UK and in Europe that need to work closely together to achieve our target. Also, for example, in the aerospace industry, to be carbon neutral, climate neutral by 2050. So this is something where we need to bundle all our efforts on the way forward. We also see that we need all our capabilities to achieve these goals. So, for example, our space capabilities, as I mentioned, they are absolutely vital in these crisis times. And UK will also play a vital role on the Earth observation missions and on the way forward. alongside with the European Space Agency and the European Union to collect the climate data that we need in order to take the necessary actions towards more climate neutral society and industry. So what we need is a pragmatic approach to regulation, working closely together between UK and European Union. And of course, the industrial part is a key component of any UK-European Union defense and security agreement. So this is absolutely vital for all what we do currently. It is likely to be also important for the UK to remind the European partners for the need of alignment. So that, of course, we need to respect your decision. We need to respect that you have your reasons for taking such a step. But I think we all agree that collaboration is vitally important for the future. So giving of course, a different interest, this is not an easy topic for the future, but I believe that we have enough foundation built in the past to continue that collaboration in the future. If you could change the slide, leading to a summary. We looked at the current operating environment. We're currently dealing with the dual challenge of COVID-19 and post-Brexit, and of course, leading into a tremendous economic crisis as well. Secondly, we looked at Europe and UK defense and space security collaboration, and why it's, in my opinion, so important to collaborate and foster collaboration even further, and create a foundation with strong programs like FCAS, Tempest in the future in order to underline the importance of collaboration. So there's a high need. There is, of course, we have to accept that we are different. I think, as I said before, I think that's the beauty of Europe. That's creating more diverse, more efficient, more agile solutions. It has enabled us in the past to do more with less. And I think in these times, this is even more vital than ever to be strengthened on the way forward. We see that the health crisis has put us under tremendous stress, and now going into economic crisis, there will be a strong focus on value for money. So the activities that we see coming from the UK government, from the armed forces and Royal Air Force, of course, go in that direction. We will strongly support it, and we definitely expect that also from all our other nations. And we're strongly committed to do all our efforts to contribute in a more efficient way to the success of our customers. So we hope that EU member states and UK will find a way forward for close collaboration on defense, space and security matters. We believe this is vital for a European company like ours, and we hope that this is also supported by all the member states going forward. So with this, thanks for your attention, especially after a long working day. I really appreciate that, and I'm looking forward to your questions. Thanks a lot.
Dirk, thank you very much. It's actually should thank you, and I'll do that in a moment. But I've got a couple of questions or themes of questions that have been stacking up. You mentioned about the digitization of manufacturing, digital backbones in airplanes, and digital twinning. And of course, your participation in the ventilator challenge was an absolute textbook case study of how to apply those sorts of things to a manufacturing problem. But do you see this post-COVID world going even further with a lot more remote working through secure links and leading to a great deal more automation?
We have a lot of discussions internally to analyze the learnings out of the recent 3 months. And of course, being in discussion with different industries through different associations, we strongly believe the way of working will change for good. It's not something that will be temporary. We have a lot of learnings. We see that also, I think this is in line with the change of generations going into the millennials and Generation Z. We see, of course, there's different expectation towards the way we work. There are a lot of individual challenges in the nations based also on labor working rules. But we strongly believe that we have found and proven during this recent 3 months that we can do this completely differently. We see that we have been able to increase our bandwidth, our VPN connections, secure connections to the different systems as needed in record time to cope with the demands of our customers and keeping operation up and running through the whole time. So we have proven it is possible. But of course, we need to differentiate. We see good and bad examples, and of course, we need also to adapt that this needs a different way of looking at the output of our work, making sure that we are able to judge the efficiency of our different work that we do in different locations. But I strongly believe it will have a huge impact for good, and we will change the way of working, not only for a temporary period, but for a long time.
Thank you. And there's a lot of interest, obviously, in FCAS and Tempus. So in terms of who brings what to the party, what strengths do you think the UK would bring to a combination of Tempus and FCAS?
I think, of course, UK and its aerospace industry has a long history of aviation innovation. And of course, we have seen that also in our close collaboration towards Eurofighter with BAE and the supply chain in UK, which has been tremendously good. And we will continue to work at that level also for the decades to come. So already through the Eurofighter Typhoon, we have a collaboration that will go long into the 60s. So we have proven that we can work closely together. We can also say that we have proven to overcome challenges, because of course not everything was easy at the beginning, but we solved problems of IPs, of collaboration, how to work in a complementary way, how to work efficiently despite all the challenges of bureaucracy. So I think this is also one of the elements where I believe this is a strong factor that shows that the international collaboration is not something new. We have done that for decades before, and I believe bringing more partners to the table, combining the history that we have gained all together in UK, in France, in Germany, in Spain, and many other nations, is definitely something where, as I said before, I strongly believe that our European diversity will at the end create a more performant and cheaper solution that can be created in other nations of the world.
Thanks. And a final question. There's quite a theme developing here on space, and particularly the European Space Agency and the relationship the UK might have in the future. And you'll be well aware that the UK's interest in the agency has waxed and waned over 20 or more years. But you mentioned climate change, Earth observation. Is there enough to bring or to weld the UK into the agency's future work programs?
I think the last ministerial conference has been a positive surprise in all areas. We saw that ESA for the first time got more money than they requested, and this especially strongly supported from the UK and Germany, where a lot of other nations were surprised by the efforts taken from both nations to demonstrate their willingness to invest into innovation in space. So I think UK has already proven that the commitment to work closer together, to invest into innovation in space. So I think the commitment is there. This is something, of course, on the way forward, in order to avoid, let's say, similar discussion like we had in Galileo, where I know this is a big pain point. We need to ensure that there is a strong collaboration, there is a strong return of its investment, of course, back to UK. But I believe strongly with the skills and capabilities that the different companies in UK have on the space side, I'm not worrying about contribution into European programs based on the talented people that we have. So I strongly believe that this is something where we have a good base. We will struggle probably towards the next ESA ministerial conference, because coming out of COVID-19, going into the economic crisis, the challenge for the next ministerial conference will be 10 times higher than for the last year conference. And this will be then the next proof point. I think, do we in Europe, under these difficult times, continue to believe that space is a major strategic asset for Europe, and of course also for the collaboration between UK and Europe, in order to demonstrate, especially in my opinion, as we fall behind the US and China on the space race. I think this is a proof point. In 2 years from now, can we keep that strong spirit up? Can we increase the spending? And can we play a major role on the global landscape? Not in a discussion between UK and Europe, but really on a global landscape in a competition with other space nations as China and US.
Thank you very much. And now it just falls to me to bring the session to a close. But first of all, our thanks to you. An amazingly comprehensive tour d'horizon of the factors that are impacting now and will impact in the future on defence and space in Europe and the UK, and indeed beyond. And it's such a privilege to get the insights from someone who's really at the interface where the rubber meets the road. I mean, you'll be well aware it's easy to be nice to airlines as customers, but being nice to governments as customers is really quite complex, particularly in the environment we find ourselves in now. I would say that the contribution of Airbus, and indeed others, but specifically Airbus, to the COVID-19 response was truly amazing, and we salute you for all the company did and the way everybody pulled together to make that possible. And seeing that transformation of the Advanced Manufacturing Centre, it was just truly terrific. There'll be a lot of relieved people who've been listening to you for your views on FCAS and the future of Tempest. And as you rightly say, it makes no sense to have competing systems in an ever more competitive market, one in which is developing by the day as we see more Chinese and Russian equipment entering the export market. So thank you so much for those insights. I think Tommy Sopwith would certainly have approved of your lecture. He would have been stunned by the advance of technology, and I'm sure he would have encouraged us all in this endeavor. So my thanks too to the audience, and everybody will see a survey at the end of the webinar. We'd be really grateful if you would give us your feedback, because it's very useful to us. I hope you found today's webinar informative, and we of course look forward to you joining us at future events. And thank you, stay safe and well, and good night.